again, everybody, and welcome to another exciting episode of Daily December 2018. This is for day 7, and today I want to talk about something that's really misunderstood, and even when I talk to professionals and doctors and things like that, it's surprising how much misinformation there is out there about this, and a lot of it has to do with televisions and movies. What I want to talk about is agoraphobia. For those of you that don't know, I have a laundry list of mental disorders that I deal with on a daily basis. And one of them is panic disorder with agoraphobia. And when I mention to people I have agoraphobia, most people give me a weird look, because a lot of people, not really consciously but kind of subconsciously, don't think it's a real thing if they've heard about it, because you see it in movies and on television, and it doesn't seem real. It's even the butt of jokes a lot of the time. Like, a character suffering from agoraphobia generally is ridiculed. They're a humorous character, and their struggles with it are kind of made fun of, because it doesn't make sense to a lot of people, mostly because they don't actually know what it is. What most people think of when they hear the term agoraphobia is fear of the outdoors. That's what people think agoraphobia is. It's not. That's a common misconception. I've had people actually argue with me when I say, "Oh, I have agoraphobia," and they'll go, "Okay, how are you here?" Because I generally don't meet new people in my room. So they'll go, "You're outside. How can you have agoraphobia and be outside?" I'm like, I'm not afraid of being outside. Well, that's what agoraphobia is. No, it's not. Never has been. Yes, it is. I've looked up the definition. Agoraphobia is the fear of going outside. Nope. Never has been. What that comes from is the actual Greek root of the name agoraphobia. Agora is Greek for open spaces, and phobia, I can't remember if it's Greek or Latin, but it's fear. That's how you get, arachnophobia is fear of spiders. or aquaphobia, fear of water. Agoraphobia, fear of open places. That kind of makes sense, right? That's not what it is, though. Agoraphobia, quite literally, is fear of panic attacks. And to explain more, it's the fear of having a panic attack in a place where you can't get to somewhere safe to deal with the panic attack. And agoraphobia is defined and diagnosed through what are called avoidance behaviors. You don't get diagnosed with agoraphobia if you aren't going to fairly extraordinary lengths to avoid what it is you're afraid of. And that's true about any actual phobia. A diagnosed psychological phobia is not like I'm really afraid of this, or I'm, this makes me very uncomfortable. It is a irrational fear that is so strong that you take extraordinary measures to avoid that thing. Like spending a year and a half in your room, or not going to pee for 3 or 4 hours, despite the fact that you've needed to go for 3 or 4 hours, because you're afraid that if you have a panic attack in the wrong place, something very bad will happen. And that's agoraphobia. And different people experience it in different ways. There are some people who quite literally cannot leave a certain area. They are physically incapable of doing that. And that's where you get the people that think it's fear of outside. But there are other people who sometimes manifest in being in situations you can't get out of, like going into an elevator. There are some people that can't ride in elevators because of their agoraphobia. Because as soon as the door closes, they can't leave that room. They have no control over what happens until the door opens again. So some people can't do that. Some people, it manifests quite a few different ways. Now, the rough thing about phobias in general is the best way to treat them is through what's called exposure therapy and cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT. Exposure therapy is exactly like it sounds. It's exposing yourself to whatever it is that you have a phobia of, to basically build up a resistance to the fear. CBT involves thought, not policing, but basically challenging the thoughts that spur the fear. Like for me, I have a relatively practical reason why I have agoraphobia. I have panic disorder, which means that I get panic attacks a lot. I actually get them on a daily basis, sometimes multiple times a day. And with panic attacks, generally there's a trigger, something that causes the panic attack to start. And that can be treated with CBT and challenging your thought processes and things like that. Because once you identify the negative thought process, the train of thought that leads your body to believe that you're in mortal danger, once you learn how to challenge that and you break that thought process, you can start to get more control over your panic attacks. But it requires knowing what the triggers are, identifying the bad thought processes and the bad logic that you're using. With panic disorder, I don't have triggers for all my panic attacks. Roughly about 50% of my panic attacks have no trigger. They just happen. Sometimes it's instant. I'm fine one moment, and then I'm instantly in a place where I'm afraid for my life. And sometimes it's a slow buildup that I can't explain why I keep getting more anxious, and none of my meditation or breathing or grounding techniques are working. It builds up to a panic attack. So because of that, I can only somewhat control half of my panic attacks. And unless we find out what causes the other half, which as of right now, psychology doesn't know, I can't do anything about that. So my agoraphobia started because I was having these panic attacks, and I developed this tremor in my right arm, and it's linked to my anxiety, and as I get more anxious, it gets worse, and then people look at me like I'm crazy and dangerous, because I shake and I stutter, and I have these quick jerking motions, and that, like, I don't really blame them. I kind of look dangerous, and so that feeds into my anxiety, and then I have panic attacks where I get even worse. I lose the ability to think critically a lot of the times. I become very focused on getting somewhere safe. I generally lose the ability to communicate very well. My stutter will get even worse. Even before I developed this stutter, I would have a hard time speaking, because my mind would be racing so fast, and it would be focusing on things like, where are the exits? How many people are around me? How quickly could they get to me to hurt me? How many things look like weapons around me that could be used to hurt me? So that's what my brain is thinking when someone's trying to have a conversation with me. It's hitting nothing, because I can't focus on someone speaking to me. I have to focus on the dozens of people around me to make sure none of them are going to try to kill me, because my brain is convinced at that point that I'm going to die, and it's desperately trying to figure out what it is that's going to kill me, so that I can take the appropriate action. For almost a year now, I've developed a new symptom, and I was finally diagnosed with something that actually explains my tremor and a lot of other symptoms, stress-induced symptoms I've had my entire life that no one could explain. They weren't drug interactions. It shouldn't have been happening, but they were, and they were real. It wasn't like I was making it up or anything, but none of my doctors could figure out what was causing it, just that it was happening. And so they treat the symptoms, but they couldn't figure out the cause. Well, I finally did some of my own study, and with the help of my therapist, I was able to get my psychiatrist to diagnose me with what's called conversion disorder. And conversion disorder means stress and anxiety, for me, turn into physical symptoms. Things like this tremor is one of the more minor versions of my conversion disorder. The stutter is another aspect of it, and the worst aspect of it is I have psychogenic non-epileptic seizures. I have seizures when I have panic attacks. It's not every single time. I average roughly about two to three a week right now, and have been for 6 months. Like I said, almost a year ago they started, and it was just once every couple of weeks, and then they just got more and more. So, to bring this back to agoraphobia, my agoraphobia is based on two things. One, I am terrified that I'm going to be killed if I have a panic attack in a public place, because I look dangerous, I can't communicate, and I can't respond to other people. So if someone were to call the cops and they were to give me an order, I would not be able to follow that order through no fault of my own. And people with mental disorders, serious mental disorders, are up to 10 times more likely to be shot by law enforcement because of things like this, and because most law enforcement officials and most people in general are not trained and not taught how to deal with someone who's having a panic attack or who's having a schizophrenic episode. And so they revert to their training. They do know. They order the person to get down. They'll cuff them or whatever they can do, eliminate the threat. But if you're in a schizophrenic delusion, or like me, you're having a panic attack and can't understand their words because you're focused on the fact that they have guns and they could kill you, there's nothing I can do. So, as much as the likelihood of me being shot still relatively low, it's not an uncommon thing. It's a low occurrence, but it's a real danger for me. And it terrifies me. Imagine going to the grocery store and having to worry about hearing someone yell at somebody else, because that's one of my triggers. And because of that, going into a panic attack, freaking out, and then having the cops called on you. I've seen it happen. I believe it actually happened in Milwaukee. I don't live in Milwaukee anymore. I used to. But I live in Wisconsin. And if I remember correctly, it's been a little while. There was someone with a mental disability. The cops ordered him to lie down everything because they'd had a call from concerned citizens. He didn't do anything, and they shot him. He couldn't do anything because he didn't understand what was going on. He got shot. I believe in that specific instance, it was just they shot him in the arm and he was fine. He still got shot because they couldn't recognize that he was having a schizophrenic or he might have been autistic, I can't remember. But they couldn't recognize that he had a mental disorder. And had they reacted differently, everything could have been resolved peacefully. He wasn't a danger to himself or anyone else. He just looked scary. And that's what I look like. And so I'm absolutely terrified of leaving my room because I'm afraid someone's going to shoot and kill me. The second reason I have agoraphobia is these seizures. If I have a seizure in a public place, I could hurt or kill myself. Not intentionally. If I have a seizure in a grocery store, I worked retail for 5 or 6 years. They're gone now, but I used to have scars on my wrist. Not because I ever cut myself, but because the shelves and the sign holders in the store I worked at were razor sharp. And I used to have to reach back to pull merchandise up or to reset a planogram or carry a shelf and redo an aisle or something. And I would cut myself on it because I'm reaching in. It always cut right there. It was an interesting experience trying to explain to my doctor that the scars on my wrists were not from self-harm. They were from work. But I know exactly how dangerous those shelves are. I know how much weight they can hold. And I also know that they can cause serious injury. And when I start having a seizure, I shake, my head whips back and forth. If I'm not sitting down, I generally have to get on the ground. And I slam my head into things because I can't stop it. I think one of the last seizures I had in public, I had a family member with me. They'd driven me to the doctor for to get a heart monitor put in. And they actually had to put their hand behind my head and hold it as I repeatedly slammed my head into the wall to keep me from destroying myself and seriously damaging my head. I have no idea how much damage I did to their hand. They could still use it afterwards. But I spent about a minute just slamming their hand repeatedly into the wall because that was enough cushion that I didn't hurt myself. And that's what had to happen. So that's why I have agoraphobia, because I have a real possibility of being seriously hurt or killed anytime I'm not in a place where I can have a seizure and be safe. And that's what agoraphobia is. It's not being afraid of the sun or being afraid of outside. It's being afraid of having a panic attack in a place that you can't get to somewhere safe. And not everybody's like me. Not everybody turns into a twitching, mumbling, stuttering mess when they have a panic attack. But it's a real issue, and it's terrifying to be around other people and to be terrified that you're going to die. So yeah, that's agoraphobia. It is treatable. There are no medications or anything that will fix any sort of phobia. It's done through therapy and a lot of work. So it's possible that someday I may be able to overcome it, and it won't stop me from doing what it is I want to do. That's one of the reasons I'm getting off the Valium, or I am off of it, is because that was one thing that was causing damage and anxiety for me. And now that I'm off of it and I'm going through withdrawal, my therapist and I can start working towards figuring out as many triggers and causes of my mental disorders and start helping me to develop healthy coping methods so I can function like a normal person. But until that happens, my existence is basically what you can see right here. I have my bed is over there, about, I don't know, 3 feet away from where I'm sitting. And the majority of my day is spent either in bed or in this chair, because both of those places are soft. They're padded, like my chair has some padding. It's not great. But if I have a seizure, I'm relatively safe here. As soon as I walk out my door, I'm not safe anymore. If I have a seizure on the stairs, I've already fallen down our stairs, bruised my tailbone. I actually drew blood from falling down the stairs. Kitchen is terrifying because it's full of sharp things that could end up hurting me. Basically everywhere in the house there's corners I could hurt myself on, and hardwood floors in some places, and then once I get outside it's even worse, because there's concrete and cinder block walls and aluminum siding. So yeah, right now, my life consists of a bed and a chair. It's really not fun, and I would give anything in the world to not live like this. But that's my life. Anyway, yeah, that's all for me today. I'm a couple days behind on Daily December, so I'm gonna try and catch up eventually. I just don't know how quite yet. The last few days have been pretty rough, and tomorrow I have a blood draw, and for the past year, every time I've had blood drawn, I've had a seizure right after. And the last time, they barely had enough time to get the needle out of my arm before I started to seize. So I'm terrified of tomorrow, because if they don't get the needle out in time, bad things happen. So yeah, I'm gonna try and relax and prepare for my blood draw and hope that nothing goes wrong. Anyway, that's all for me today. I'll see you guys next time. All right? Bye-bye.